Hello guys, welcome back to John's workshop, and in this video we're going to be making some racking for the back of the centre lathe at the other end of the workshop. And the reason we're doing that is because one or two reasons. I've got quite a few tools that I've not yet managed to get set out, and they're kicking around in drawers and boxes. And also I've had a couple of very kind subscriber donations to the channel, which has given me more tools that I now need to store and make ready for use at the back of the lathe, where I'm probably going to use them the most. So what we're going to do is make some racking up to largely store all of my Morse Taper sleeves and Morse Taper drills, reamers, that kind of thing, right at the back of the lathe. And also dual purpose racking on the front of that. It will also have the Dickson quick change cartridges sat on the front that have got all my tools set up in it. So it's two sets of storage in one, largely. We're going to be doing some steel work, some steel fabrication and welding work to make the brackets up, because what I'd like to do with these is, rather than just have them sort of vertical so all the drills go straight up in the air, I want to kind of camp them over at a bit of an angle so that they're facing slightly towards me, so they're easier to access, so I'm not reaching right over the lathe to get them. So yeah, some steel work to do and some welding. And the racking itself is going to be made of some aluminium box section, so 50 by 50 box section. So I've got two lengths of that, 2 meters, and that should be long enough for me to have two rails going right the way across the back of the lathe, with all the Morse Taper stuff in the top and all the Dickson cartridges on the front. So there's going to be a bit of riveting to do. Pop riveting, I'm probably going to have a go at some pop riveting. I've done some years and years ago, but none in this workshop. So we'll do some pop riveting. We're going to do some drilling, and I'm yet to decide whether we do that. I might just do that on the pillar drill to save stripping all the mill down. So some marking out, some drilling of aluminium, and then some fabrication, as I said, of the steel work. So just before we start, I'm going to take you very quickly to the back of the lathe and show you what I've got to store my stuff just now. And then we'll crack on with the manufacture. So yeah, as it says at the bottom, let's crack on. So I'm at the back of my lathe here. So this is what I've got at the moment. So it's just a piece of wood on some brackets, and I've got some fascia upside down on there that's got my Dickson quick changes on it. And I don't have too many, I've only got half a dozen or so at the moment, but I am going to make some more when I get my shaper up and running. So I'm going to need more storage space than what I've already got, and I've got quite a few more Morse Taper drills, Morse Taper sleeves, things like that there's just no room for on here. So this has outgrown its usefulness, so we're going to be taking this off the wall and replacing it with the new racking. So first things first, we're going to get some raw material cut, and we'll be bringing you back probably during a bit of that cutting so you can see the materials I'm cutting up, and then we'll bring you back when we start putting holes in it and start fabricating the brackets. Right, we're done with our cutting. So I've got my two aluminium box sections here. I've measured up and I've marked out along the lengths where the brackets are going to go. So these are the spaces that I need to miss with my holes for the Morse Taper stuff to go into here. I've cut off 20 of these, which these need some machining first, but these are going to get pot riveted to the front in various places, and that's what my Dickson cartridges are going to sit on. And I've cut off 8 of each of 3 different lengths of mild steel, 6mm thick, 25mm wide, black hot rolled mild steel, and these are effectively going to make up the brackets when we're done, that are going to sit at an angle like this, which will hold the aluminium bars and screw them to the wall. So there's a bit of drilling to do in the brackets, then there's some welding to do to fabricate the brackets, there's some milling to do on these bits to get them right, and some drilling for the pop rivets, and then I need to mark out on here for what I'm intending to put in, which is largely various different Morse taper, sleeves, drills, that kind of thing. So we're going to be drilling, you know, a big hole in the top and a small hole in the bottom face so that these just drop in, and we'll be going everything from small up to big and even bigger drills going into the top of here. Right, we've got our marking out done. Excuse the handheld. I'm going to pan along. So on the top one, which is actually going to be the bottom one on the wall, we've got 7 Morse Taper 2 sleeves. We've got 6 big spaces in between Morse Taper 3 for chucks and centres. So I've left a big enough space for this kind of thing to fit in next to each other. Moving further along, we've then got space for 18 Morse Taper 3 sleeves, which takes us up to here, and then I've got 19 spaces for Morse Taper 1 drills, and that takes us to the end of the first bar. And then as I go up to the second bar, which will be the higher one, I've got Morse Taper 2 drills. Not sure how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those Morse Taper, no, is that, yeah, that's Morse Taper 2 drills, sorry, that's 7 of those, sorry, that's why there's more here, 21 altogether, Morse Taper 2 drills on the start of that bar, and then Morse Taper 3 drills all the way out to the end. I've got 28 spaces for Morse Taper 3 drills right to the end of the bar. So that's a lot of gear on those 2 racks, and don't forget on the front of each one of these there's going to be riveted the plates that I need to mill to hold my Dickson cartridges for the lathe. So these are going to be holding a lot of tackle behind the lathe when they're done. So I will bring you back. We're probably going to move on to these next. I'm still waiting for some of my drills to turn up for drilling these holes, so we'll move on to these next on the mill and start machining these down as a group to get them to fit the Dickson cartridges and putting the holes in that we're going to use for pot riveting, fastening to the front of these. That's our first side done, and what I've done is I've done all the deburring while this is still in the vise, and I've put a radius on this corner just with a file. So these are only saw cut edges, so just with a file, because that's going to be the lead in to load the cartridges onto the tangs. So what I'm going to do now is flip that round, sit it up the other way, and do exactly the same operation on the underside. So I'll bring you back when I've got all of that done. Okay, so we're just going to drill these now, this first half. So I've got 10 stacked up and we're going to drill through 4mm for 4mm pot rivet. So I've just got a spot drilling. Just going to spot the holes first. So we're just going to go through each one of these and just take the burrs off the holes nice and quick. Like that. So we're just going to run through them all like that and just pop the burrs off, ready for riveting. So we've got the first of our aluminium box sections in the vise on the mill, and we've got a screw jack onto this end with a toe clamp, and this is just lightly nipped. This is just to hold it. We've only got drilling operations to worry about, so should be fine. Right guys, I'm just lining myself up for the very end holes, so I've got my table as far that way as it will go largely, and I can just get to this end hole. But an interesting point about large parts on a small machine, if you have a look, because I've got my machines packed in quite tightly here in this workshop, I'm just going to pan up. You can see that my lathe is just clearing the underside of the part, which is good, but I've had to remove my tailstock, which is now sat up on top of the headstock, to get enough clearance to get this part at full length onto the mill. So I'm going to get these last two holes done at this end, and then we can start moving on down the length and feeding the part gradually this way. I'm putting 10mm holes in top and bottom for a start, all the way through, and then I've got various different holes and finishing that I need to do on both top side and bottom side. These holes are 10mm finished on the bottom for Morse Taper 1. I need to open the tops out, and I'm going to attempt to use this cone drill for that to get to the right diameter, because I don't have a drill the right diameter that I need for the top of the Morse Taper 1s. And then largely we're going to be figuring out as we go to the bigger stuff what bottom size drill and top size drill we're going to need to open these holes out. But I'm going to put 10mm through everywhere for a start, and then I can just pick up on those 10mm holes at various different setups to open them out to the right size. There we go, nice and easy. So I'll get all of these done like that, and then I've got to turn this whole unit round to machine the other half of it and do the same thing. So I'll bring you back when I've done that, and then what we're then going to do is turn this the other way up and start attacking the bottom holes to get them to the right size. Okay, those of you with a nervous disposition probably look away now. For the rest of you, spring has sprung. And this is Harry, the shop spider. And he's a big fat boy. Look at that. We have a mutual understanding, me and Harry. Harry gets to live here for free, and what he does in return is he keeps all the midges and dung flies and all those kind of creepy crawlies that come in here in the autumn and winter. He keeps them down in the workshop. He's been in here for probably 3 years. I know exactly where he lives, in the corner, and he's been missing all winter, but it looks like he's just decided to surface, and obviously out looking for his first meal of 2022. So that's Harry. Apologies for those of you that don't like spiders. He's a big lad. I'd put the rule up there, but he's 50, 60 millimeters, probably more, maybe 70, 75 millimeters the span of his legs, I would think. He's a big spider. Anyway, oh, there he goes. Back on with the show. Bye bye, Harry. See you later. So we're on to fitting the tangs for the Dickson Tool post holders. I've got my bar marked out. I'm just lining these up with the top where I've milled it, something like that. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate. Feels good. Nipping up. Let me just drill the 2 holes. So we've got our pop rivets and pop riveter. It's all a bit savage. That's got our tang fitted. You can see I've done one already. The idea being that my Dickson cartridges now just sit on the tangs with my drills and sleeves and whatnot behind, and I've also, this is going to be angled forward, which will, this seems a little bit like it's blocking access, but with the angle that I'm going to put on the brackets, I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem. And the whole idea being that most of the weight of the cartridge is not taken by the tang, it's actually taken by the box section, because that sits flush with the front face, so the weight sits on top of the box section. So that was the thinking behind it. Just about enough room. There will be some with slightly larger gaps between because of where the brackets are going to go, so any longer tools I'll be able to put in the bigger spaces. So I will join you at some point in the future when I've done another 18 of those. 8 more of those to do. Okay, we've got our first set done. We've now got it set up. I've made a gauge to set the back piece at the right angle. So we're just going to have a crack at that and see what happens. There we go. For a novice welder, I think that'll pass. So we'll get the other 7 done to this standard and I'll bring you back. Not the neatest welding in the world, but they're only brackets and I think they'll be absolutely fine. So next job, I need to get the old shelf off the wall, clear the decks, and then start offering brackets and long aluminium bars up onto the wall. I've got one more set of holes to drill through the centre here, which is to hold the aluminium bars into the brackets. So I'm just going to do those off camera. That's just drilling straight through 6.5mm for a 6mm cap head to go through and clamp the bars into the bracket, and then we should be ready to fit them up to the side of the garage. Right, then we've got the first one of these, the lower rack, with all of our brackets fitted to it, so 4 brackets, and we're just going to offer that up to the wall. And a bit of a tip, if you're ever doing anything like this, especially, you know, this is awkward, I've got the lathe in the way here, so I can't get right up close to where I need to work. If you've got multiple brackets and you've got some brackets that are roughly in the centre, all I'm going to do is hold this roughly in the position of the height I want it in, which is about there, and I'm just going to mark off one hole so we've got that marked. And then we're just going to put one screw in that top hole that's roughly in the centre, and that will hold the thing up to the wall, and then it will be tipping, and then I can stick the spirit level on it, mark a second hole, and then fix it, and then it's just a case of popping the rest of the screws in at that point, he says. Okay, so we'll put our screw in. There we go. The next job is the spirit level. Nice and easy because we've got, oh, not maybe not so easy, we'll stick it behind the screw holes. So we're slightly high at this right hand end. Ooh. Looks level. It doesn't it doesn't look level because the back guard of the lathe is actually going up at an angle, but the rack itself is actually level. That is going to forever bug me because that just looks like it's not level, but it is. So what I'll do now is I'll get the rest of the screws put into there, and I'll bring you back when I've done that, show you what that looks like, and then I'll do the same thing with the upper rack, get that put in position, and then I'll bring you back again. So there we go, that's got our first rack on. I just chucked some stuff on it just quickly just to give you the idea, so bit of an operator's sort of viewpoint really from where the camera is at the minute. So we've got our sort of revolving centres, I've got some more stuff to go in here, fixed centres, sleeves, and then I've got my most used, well that's all my Dickson cartridges actually, I don't have any more than that at the minute. So I've got some more steel to make some more, which as you can see I've only got one spare position on this bottom rack, which is at the far end there, and then obviously as the top rack goes on I've got 11 more positions for more tool holders to go on. So you get the idea, it's a dual purpose rack with everything on it, hopefully. So what I'll do now is get the top rack put up to the same kind of idea. I'll get a bit more stuff put into them and I'll bring you back when I've done that. So I'll just zoom in on this left hand corner, give you a bit more of an idea. So there you go, you can see the idea now. Very handy, easy to grab the stuff straight onto the tool post of the lathe and then straight back onto the rack, nice and easy. Okay, so complete. Good test of my welding skills over time on the brackets, because believe me there's a lot of weight on that top one, but there is still enough room next to the drills for tool holders to go on, so not a problem, all within easy reach of the lathe where I'm working, so that's all good. One slight area where I did struggle was where I've got the bigger things like the chucks and centres. There's really not enough room to put a tool holder on that tang, so yeah, a bit of a faux pas with that one. I guess I could always bend the tang out a little bit if I needed that extra position, but I've got plenty of spares, you know, I've got all these ones across the top before I need to start worrying about that. So yeah, more than happy with that. It's all to hand, can reach all of it without stretching. So we've got all of our tool holders, our centres, chucks, that kind of thing, all the tailstock things, and here we've got dead centres, Morse Taper sleeves, all in there, and plenty more space for more of those. And then starting at this end we've got our Morse Taper 1 stuff, so there's about 19 positions for Morse Taper 1, there's another 6 at the top row. Then we've got Morse Taper 2, we've got a section for Morse Taper 2 stuff, and then the rest of it is all Morse Taper 3 all the way out. So pleased with that. I'm keeping this one up here out of harm's way, so this is my Wickman DTI, so we're going to leave that one right up in this end position so it's not right behind the working area. So yeah, pleased with that. It's been quite a lot of work, that drilling holes and figuring it all out, but I'm pleased with how that's turned out. That's very, very useful and a very good way of storing all of the stuff easily and readily to hand for when I'm working on the lathe. So with all of that being said, I will bring you back to the board and we'll close this episode out. So there we go guys, that gets us to the end of a little bit of workshop organisation and getting some storage up behind the lathe, which I've been meaning to do for a long time. So I hope you found that interesting, something you know that everybody probably struggles with at some point in their workshop time, is finding space for everything to go. So it was worth putting the effort in to make something that's far bigger than the amount of stuff that I've got to store in it at the minute, which means it's expandable. So as I get more gear in the future, more tool holders, more drills, that kind of thing, I've got somewhere for them to go straight away. And what I'm planning to do is go through my drills, my Morse Taper drills and stuff, and find out where I've got some gaps and fill the gaps in so that I've got a decent set of drills that take me from my small drill index boxes that go up to largely 10mm in 0.1 increments, and then move on from there in the Morse Taper drills up through the ranges to the bigger sizes. So there's different ways you could do this. This is my take on it. Everybody's got their own sort of workshop, their own sizes, their own constraints, but it was a way for me to mix drill storage with, as I said before, the Dickson cartridges storage, all behind the lathe, all nice and neat, readily to hand, and just an option, different way of doing it. And it wasn't that expensive in raw materials really, but obviously quite a bit of time invested in getting all the holes drilled and things like that. So hope you found that useful, hope you found it interesting, might have given some people some ideas, and we will catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.